I'm gonna start this story off by saying that at the time this happened, I was a 19-year-old sophomore in college. I was living on campus in their apartment-style dorms, and my college wasn't exactly in the nicest part of the city. So I would usually drive a little bit farther to go grocery shopping so I could be in a little more of a safer area. The night that this happened, I was going to cook dinner and I realized that I didn't have some of these spices that I needed. Normally, I would have just said forget it, and I would have made something else. But the meat had already been thawed for a day or so, and I needed to cook it. I debated just going to the Walmart that was like 2 minutes away from my campus. But it was getting late, and I didn't want to go there by myself in the dark. That Walmart is right next to a major highway, and being a girl by herself, I felt uncomfortable risking it. So instead, I went to the Walmart that was about 20 minutes away, just a few towns over. I got to that other Walmart and I bought my spices, along with a few other things, and checked out, no problem. By the time that I was done, it was now completely dark out. I was back at the driver's side of my car and putting my few bags in the passenger seat when I noticed a woman, maybe in her 50s, looking at the back of my car. At the time, I drove a really old car, and if you knew your cars, it would be surprising that it was still running. I've had a few people in the past, older men usually, look at it, or come up and ask me about it. I figured this was what that lady was doing, and I kind of ignored it until, out of the corner of my eye, I saw her come around my car and stop about 2 feet behind from where I was standing. I was parked next to a parking lot median, so it's not like she was getting in a car next to me. "Excuse me," she said. I turned around saying, "Yeah," kind of prepared to answer. "What year or model is your car?" "My church is giving out leftover boxes of food from our food drive to people in need. Could I give you one? We have them in our car over there." This immediately set off an alarm in my head. I mean, she had just seen me put my groceries in my car. Why would I need something else if I had just gone shopping? Also, the churches and food pantries around my college were usually cleaned out after they had their shopping days, for the people who really relied on things like food drives. There was hardly, if ever, anything that was just left over. I had watched enough Criminal Minds and read enough Facebook posts to know that this felt like the classic lure. I shuddered over my words a bit at first, trying to figure out what to say, but I finally got out. "Oh, no thank you, I'm good. I'd like to see it go to someone who could really use it." I felt like that was an okay response if she really was handing out boxes. "Are you sure? They're just right over here in my car," she said, taking a step and making the gap between us a little smaller. I was panicking. As she stepped closer, I tried to nonchalantly put my hand in my bag and look for the small pocket knife that my dad had given me. My mind was racing as I tried to find the knife, but also to try and keep my face looking calm and not suspicious. I repeated to her that I was good and that the box of food should go to someone who could really use it. She finally seemed to let up, saying, "Okay, have a good night and God bless you," and all that stuff. I told her to have a good night as well, and then as soon as her back was turned, I got into my car and I locked all of the doors. As I pulled out of my parking spot, I noticed that the car she was walking to had 3 large men standing at the trunk of it. They were barely illuminated by the parking lot lights, but I think it was an early 2000s white Nissan. As I tried to go down the parking lot aisle as quickly as I could, I saw the men looking at the back of my car, just like the woman had. I then noticed where their eyes were shifted to. They weren't looking at my car, but they were looking at my license plate. Just as I got to the end of the aisle waiting to turn, I saw 2 of the men get in the front seats, and the other man and the woman get in the back seat. Their car started and they started to pull out too. I was having a full-blown panic attack now. Just a week before, my mom had posted something on Facebook about how 2 men had followed her and her mom through a Walmart. Again, I had watched enough crime shows to know that this wasn't painting a pretty picture. I finally got my opportunity to turn, but that car was coming up behind me. I made the quick decision to take a really odd way back to campus. I made a ton of turns and went through a lot of small streets instead of taking one of the two main roads. I don't think that I saw the car again after I pulled out of the parking lot, but I was definitely not risking it. By the time that I got back to my college, I had calmed down a little bit. I started to wonder, maybe you're overthinking this, and believe there actually are good people in the world. And I decided if they were really just giving out boxes of food, then hopefully it does go to someone in need. That was until I was walking behind my car, heading towards my building. There was an SF faintly written in white sidewalk chalk on the brown paint of my car. I was shocked and terrified, knowing that I definitely did not put that there. I said out loud, "Oh my God," as I practically dropped my bags on the ground and rushed to wipe the chalk off with the sleeve of my jacket. My car had been tagged. After a few seconds of wiping, the chalk was gone, so I locked my car, grabbed my bags, and raced into my building. I got into my dorm and saw the dinner that I was supposed to make, but I lost my appetite completely. I put everything away and went into my bedroom, still reeling over what had happened in the last 45 minutes. I sent the whole story as a Snapchat video to some of my friends, who were just as shocked as I was. My one friend Sarah said that she thinks SF stood for a single female. It made sense, which made the whole experience that much scarier. I called my mom afterward and told her everything that had happened, and by the end of the call, she was sending me an Amazon package with pepper spray in it. I didn't go out after dark or by myself for about 2 weeks after what had happened. I'd have a friend from campus or work go with me, or I just wouldn't go at all. The whole situation was terrifying, but I think the strangest part about all of it was that I was supposed to be in a safe area. I drove all the way to that Walmart because I had a bad feeling about the one that was closer to me. I started going to the Walmart that was closer to me after that, and I've never had a negative experience at the closer one since I've started going. It's hard to believe that all the stuff I've seen on TV and on the internet could have almost happened to me. This happened to me, a 24-year-old male, a few months back, and is something that I almost forgot about until a friend reminded me of it yesterday and told me that it still freaks her out. I don't blame her because it bothers me too. Basically, I had been a walk from my apartment to a convenience store for something around midday. It's only about a 5-minute walk and it's next to a college campus, so there was plenty of foot traffic and I always felt relatively safe for being in a city. I was almost to the store when a dark SUV pulled up next to me and the driver, about a 30-year-old female, waved me down. She pointed her thumb to the back seat and then gave me a thumbs up, and so I got the impression that maybe there was someone I knew riding with her trying to say hey. I mean, that wasn't unlikely, as I had gone to school here myself and often I would run into people that I know. However, I couldn't see through her dark tinted windows initially and told her, "I don't know what you're trying to tell me." "Where you headed?" she asked, and her tone was lighthearted and casual. By this point, I could see that there was no one to my knowledge in the backseat at all. She both seemed put together and off-putting at the same time, and didn't seem quite young enough to be a student. I responded honestly and told her that I was going to the convenience store. I didn't feel like there was a reason to lie. The campus was busy, the store would be busy, and again, I was nearly there. "Hey, I'm going there too, get in and I'll take you," she said and again gestured to the back seat. She was weirdly pushy and it made so little sense to offer a ride when it was only around the corner. "No, that's okay, I want to walk and I'm on the phone with my mom," I replied, which was true. I was polite, but I also wanted to make it clear that she was interrupting a conversation and I wasn't interested. She continued to drive slowly beside me and didn't seem fazed at all. "Oh, don't worry, I'll talk to your mommy for you," she teased. "Come on, let's have a nice safe drive to the convenience store." The way that she said it was a little mocking, as if I was being unreasonable for rejecting her weird offer. "I don't know you," I said. still trying to maintain a casual tone by laughing her off. She didn't budge. "You're holding up traffic, just get in," she pressed. By this time, there were a line of cars behind her because she was still inching along beside me. A few of them honked because, by this time, the interaction had lasted about a minute. "You're the one holding up traffic because you're the one in the car," I responded more firmly. I think at this point she realized that I wasn't going to bite. "All right, I'll see you at the convenience store. Let's talk there," she said before finally driving off. I got to the convenience store about a minute later. There was no sign of her or her car there anywhere. So, she never actually stopped there, and I'm sure that if I would have gotten in that car, that I wouldn't have ended up here either. I don't know what she wanted from me, but I'm guessing I looked like an easy target because in spite of being 23 at the time, I've always looked more like an 18 or a 19-year-old. Either way, I'm pretty glad that I never found out, and I hope that I don't see that lady ever again. This happened in the late 2000s when I was 12 years old. I grew up and live in a developing nation, so many of the folks who read here might not completely understand or relate to these circumstances in the incident, but I'll try my best to give any background necessary. I was never given permission to stay out after 7 p.m. for any reason, regardless of the requirement. A movie that ends at 6:30, and I was dropped home by my friend's parents. Nope. Study at my neighbor's house past 7 p.m. No. So I was naturally very excited when I got permission to go watch a late-night movie with all my cousins and stay the night at my grandmother's place. There were 6 of us together, 5 males and 1 female cousin. I was the youngest and the rest were all adults, about mid-20s. The movie finishes at 2 a.m. and we were asked to go straight from the movie theater to home, which was nearby. I was more excited to see the city late at night, more than watching a new movie that was a big hit. We all went in 3 motorcycles to the theater and decided that once the movie was over, we would go to a cafe that was open 24/7 to have some ice cream there. This was the only place that was still open, and it was relatively far away from my grandparents' house. I can't tell you how excited all of us were, because this was a new place that had opened up in my city and was very popular. My friends used to brag about how many times they visited the place, and how beautiful the view of the city lake is in the middle of the night. Once the movie was over and we came outside, except for the crowd from the theater, the roads were completely deserted. Not a soul in sight. Only the streetlights lit up the roads, filled with potholes and nothing. But even the medical stores were open. My female cousin had extremely strict parents, so she decided to come, and said that she has to be home because her parents were up waiting for her to get back. We all tried to convince her to come with us. There were 6 of us after all, but to no end. She was adamant that she has to be home, and we eventually decided to let her go. There were 4 of us now, on 2 motorcycles, and we started riding towards the cafe. I was the pillion with my brother riding, and I noticed that 1 motorcycle was following us. It was easy as they were the only other people on the roads. I told my brother immediately, and he said that they were probably going to the same place and to just ignore it. A little further, another motorcycle asked my cousin to stop and pretended to ask for directions. They stopped, thinking these guys were lost, and started giving them directions. While we were talking to the guys asking for directions, 2 more motorcycles showed up and surrounded us, somehow 8 of them suddenly. At this point, we realized that this was an ambush, but it was already too late. One of the guys pushed my cousin from the motorcycle onto the ground and started hitting him. The rest of us were trying to defend him. Once the fighting stops, one of the cousins were bleeding all over already, and they start to ask us to call our female cousin and to tell her to come back. They had been following us from the theater. They said to tell her that they needed to talk to her, so to ask her to come back and he needs to see her. At first, we pretended that we had no women with us, and we didn't know what he was talking about. He told us that he would kill all of us if we didn't ask her to come meet us. The roads were abandoned and the occasional car that goes on the road would just pass by without slowing down. Most likely, the people in the car were afraid of getting involved. The guys were clearly having fun, laughing while they punched us and kicked us. With no help in sight, one of my cousins punched the guy and yells, "Run," and instinctively we all run in different directions, abandoning our motorcycles on the street. They started chasing us on foot at first, and then went back and got on their motorcycles chasing us through the streets. Now, I didn't have a phone with me and I was unfamiliar with the area. I ran randomly looking for a hiding place. I jumped a wall into a random person's house while the motorcycles drove by on the road looking for us. I don't know where the rest of my cousins were, especially the one who was bleeding pretty badly. The house that I jumped into was home to a huge dog who started barking at me, waking up the owners. They obviously assumed that I was there to rob them, but having one look at a 12-year-old boy in tears and clearly shaken, they asked me what had happened. I explained everything and told them that I had no idea where my brothers were. They gave me a phone and I called the police, who said they would send a car and we could expect it in 2 hours. I had all of my brothers' numbers memorized but didn't want to call them, as I was afraid they might be hiding and a ringing cell phone might give it away. I thanked the kind people who offered to host me until the morning, but I had to get back to my grandmother's place to find out if my cousins had made it back. I sneaked through the streets and found my grandparents' house. 2 of my cousins made it back, but my brother was still out there. Finally, he calls us and tells us that he's in hiding and will come back once the sun comes out, and there's general crowds outside. Until dawn, the motorcycles kept passing by our house and we were afraid they had followed one of us home. At dawn, my brother gets back and I was the only one uninjured. One of my cousins got stitches on his face and another one broke his ribs and my brother had a hairline fracture. We all ran through the night and suddenly, all these strict imposition by our parents make sense to us. My brother had called the cops too, but no one ever showed up. There was no support from anyone. And I can't even imagine what would have happened if my female cousin was with us. We never got a call back from the cops to ask if we were fine. I can't begin to imagine what would have happened if they had caught one of us. Needless to say, we never went out anywhere late at night for a long time. Some context, I was 26 and I'm a girl and I needed gas and it was around 11 p.m. on a Saturday. I pulled into a busy gas station to fill my tank except it was completely bare, not a car in sight. I also live in Alaska and it was very cold this night, maybe -10. I was tired after work and just wanted to get home. Usually I start my pump and I sit in my car due to the freezing cold. But this time I had a weird feeling that I needed to stand by the pump, so I did. I just started pumping my gas when a little golden sedan pulled up right next to me. A guy got out and I was feeling hyper-vigilant for some reason. He started cleaning his clean windows as he put the squeegee back towards me. I felt like I wanted to run, but I stayed calm, and I continued pumping my gas. He asked me if I would help him put windshield wiper fluid in his car because he had ran out, and he didn't know how to open the hood. I laughed it off and told him that I didn't know either, which was a lie. He kept getting closer and closer to me while trying to lure me to his car by saying that there was something under his seat that he couldn't reach because he's too big. Now, I'm 5'2" and I'm petite. This man was large and scruffy, think Alaska wilderness dude. At this point, I'm freaking out and hitting the call button on the pump. He took a step back and started to go back to his car. I thought that I was being smart, my gas was almost done. I looked in his car when I noticed the insides of the doors had no handles, except for the driver door, and that freaked me out. I was putting the pump back and opening my door and he was right behind me. He slammed my door shut and yelled, "You're coming with me." Obviously I refused and I was petrified. He grabbed my arm and slammed me against my car. I elbowed him as hard as I could and I started to scream at the top of my lungs. But thank God for the gas attendant with a big gun that night, because if it wasn't for him, I don't know what would have happened. The attendants pulled the video, we made a police report, and I called immediately after the guy took off. I never heard anything else about it. I just hope that he didn't get some other girl all alone.